Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. We have a fun interview today, Will, with Brandi Kelly.
Brandi Kelly's a wonderful leader, and your day will be brighter because you spent time with her. But I know we have a quick Q&A, Jen. So what's our Q&A this week?
Right. So our Q&A, I'm going to explain this question because it was my idea. Okay. So this is a question I get a lot from principals. Do I have to appease parents? What they really mean by that, let's just get down to what they really mean when they ask me this, is the most unreasonable situations. A parent who maybe is just continuing to revisit unproductive conversation, or this happens to me a lot in my work, an answer has been given and the parent keeps coming back and saying, how do I appeal? What do I do? So how do you shut that down? And do you really have to appease parents? So I'm going to toss it over to you, and then I'm going to tell you what I think and why I wanted to ask this question.
Wow, Jen. I'm not going to name the show because I don't know if I'm going to get the name of it right. But we were watching a Netflix series recently, and it was a crime show. And there is a police detective who had to go into a situation, search a house. It was a pretty intense situation, and it was the home where a couple of adolescents lived. And afterwards, the parents were confronting him on like, why did you do it this way? But they weren't yet aware of the violent crime that had happened that precipitated them coming in. And so I was watching him, and this is an actor, but he was basically saying, I'm aware of your concerns, and if we overreacted in any of those, you have the right to complain, and here's how you do it. But this is what I observed, and these are the questions I actually need to have answered in this situation. And I thought, I don't know who just wrote that script, but that guy make a really good principal.
Right.
Because he was both polite and firm at the same time. So those are my first two thoughts: is how can you be polite, but then how do you stay firm? Because that's really the hardest part, I think.
Right. Well, and to your point, law enforcement of any kind are very, very well trained on this. You open up any cop show and you'll be like, wow, they know how to not escalate. But here's what I get a lot of people who are like, and principals do too. How can I call your superintendent? Who do I complain to next? And you want to shut it down, especially when you know you're right, especially if your answer is based in policy or practice or procedure, your student handbook, whatever. What I have, I think every principal knows how to end unproductive conversations with, this conversation is no longer productive. We're going to stop now. We'll revisit it later. Or, I can tell the emotions are kind of getting a hold of us. Let's pause and come back. That's not exactly what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is more sentences like this. I understand you're frustrated with the decision, but we won't be revisiting this, period. Or, this sounds harsh, but it works. Thank you so much for sharing your wish for an appeal. I want you to understand that from our perspective, this conversation is closed, period. Where you say, we're done. You can say, there is no appeal process. I understand you want one, but there simply isn't one, so we consider this matter closed.
Yeah.
To be able to just say, we're done. Now, a lot of times principals are nervous about that because they're nervous they'll say it, and then here will come a board member, here will come the superintendent saying overturn it. So I recognize that. I wouldn't use this strong language unless you know that whoever the next person is will also understand, support, and repeat your same language. So, for example, in my situation, I have said to my superintendent before, I'm going to send this email to the parent, and the last line is, we consider this matter closed. Thank you again. And he knows it. And so then if it does get to him, he can repeat, I understand that Dr. Schwanke told you this matter was closed. It still is, or whatever it is he says.
Yeah, no, those dynamics are so important, Jen. And I know this is just a Q&A, so we could go so much more deeply in this. But every principal knows this, that the dynamics of the structure in which you work is so important to know whether someone's going to have your back.
Exactly.
But also, and I'll just say this to principals too, if you're not doing this as a practice, when you're in a conversation that you recognize may go beyond you, grab the phone, send a text. give that other person a heads up because they don't know to have your back if you haven't given them a heads up.
Exactly.
Your back too. So sometimes those really ugly situations, you can work as a team towards solving them, but you have to keep each other informed so nobody's surprised.
Exactly. And again, I think these are, I want to be clear, we're talking about the outliers. We're talking
Yes.
about the repeated, they're
Yeah.
coming at you, they're
Yeah.
coming at you over and over. You know, I probably say I consider this matter closed twice a year at most. But I do say it. And I hope, you know, a lot of principals are worried somebody's going to go out in the community and say, that woman is out. I hope that people say, yeah, Schwanke, shut that down. That's what I want them to say. So
Yep. Well,
it's an okay goal.
so politeness and firmness.
Firmness.
We can be both clear at the same time and kind. I
Exactly.
mean, those things can happen. It doesn't mean that a crazy is going to make it easy for you to stop that conversation because there are times where you have to say, you know what, we're going to have to stop this conversation now. And
Yes.
this decision has been made. And we just want you to know how
Yeah.
much we care about your child. I hope you have a great day. And Jen, I'll be the first to say that even when there were so many times where I've thought, you know, I'm getting pretty good at conflict resolution, that I would run into some situation. I'm like, I thought I was good until this one. But then you know what? That one taught me something too. And that one taught me something too. So just for anybody listening, you never ever perfect any of this.
Mm-mm.
Never. And so don't beat yourself up if the situation you handled didn't go like you wanted it to. The goal is not winning. If that's your goal, you will be so frustrated. But the goal is to create the kind of environment where students can show up and learning can happen because you've been able to maintain that consistency. So, man, Jim, what a great question. Thanks for bringing that. I know as we step into our conversation with Brandi Kelly, Brandi is also a leader, former principal, superintendent, the author of a great book. And so I'm looking forward to everyone meeting her today. So, Jen, how can folks stay connected with your content?
Yep. Find me at jenschwanke.com and you can sign up for my newsletter there and peruse a bunch of other things on that website.
And Principal Matters listeners, I want to just thank you for listening and learning to our Q&A, and we hope you enjoyed today's conversation. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but how do you actually get the right results and know the best next steps? The secret is iExcel. iExcel helps you easily assess performance and determines the best path forward for each student. Whether you need data for benchmarking or intervention planning, iExcel can do it all. And iExcel doesn't stop at assessments. It also provides you with everything else your school needs, from a standards-aligned K-12 curriculum to actionable analytics. iExcel's online learning and teaching platform is research proven to improve student outcomes, and it's used by 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts. If you want to start driving real progress, get started today at iexcel.com/PM.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 471. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week, we're going to talk about leading with hope with my special guest, Brandi Kelly. Dr. Brandi Kelly is an award-winning educator, leadership coach, and author of Lead with Hope, Building a System of Self-Efficacy. With over 20 years of experience in education and mental health, she has served as a school social worker, principal, and superintendent. As a licensed clinical social worker and Maxwell certified coach, Dr. Kelly is dedicated to empowering leaders to inspire growth, create positive change, and cultivate environments where success can thrive. Her HOPE framework, habits, optimistic outlook, purpose, and excellence, offers a holistic approach to leadership rooted in self-efficacy. And through her work, Dr. Kelly helps leaders build resilience, foster purpose, and pursue excellence. She's also the founder of Spark Hope EDU and hosts the Lead with Hope podcast, where she shares insights on leadership and resilience. Her mission is to empower individuals to lead with purpose and passion. To learn more about her, you can visit her website at leadwithhope.net. Dr. Brandi Kelly, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
All right. Well, first of all, Will, I want to say thank you for having me on this show. I have admired your work from afar for years now, and it is a pleasure to be on your show today. Something that I think people would be interested to know is while I was working as a school social worker about, oh gosh, 14, 15 years ago,
Mhm.
I was also a therapist for a time. So by day, I was counseling students and working with families at school. And by night, I was doing similar work, but slightly different at a private practice. I worked with some students with some attention deficit issues. I worked with a couple who was trying to save their marriage. And, I find that that kind of work is very fulfilling for me. It definitely fuels my purpose. And yeah, so that may be something that people didn't know about me or would be surprised to learn.
Well, you tell such inspiring stories in your book, Brandy. And so I want to just sit on this fill in the gap moment for a second, because that's a pretty unique transition.
Yeah.
A lot of people follow that traditional role from teaching to administration, and you followed a different route. So talk a little bit about someone who may be listening in that's not necessarily on the traditional route, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. So for me, I talk about in my book why I went into education in the first place, and it was because my brother Brandon drowned. Um, but seeing that different way that people in the school system helped the students that were dealing with that grief, specifically his classmates, they brought in social workers, they brought in counselors. And I'll be honest, until that point, had never even heard of a school social worker. I had no idea what that was. And
Mm.
so my heart's desire when I went to college was to be a counselor of some sorts. And then I found out I could do it in a school setting, and it was just a win-win. And I went into education. So, for people that are interested in going that non-traditional route, especially if you're interested in counseling or social work, you don't have to have a teaching degree in many states to do that in a school system. And right now, if you look at the statistics around mental health, around anxiety and depression, specifically among our youth, they are needed more than ever. And I can count on the just the tip of just front of mind. Um, I know of three, maybe four schools right now who are going without a counselor or a social worker because
Yeah.
they can't find quality candidates. They can't find qualified people. A lot of people are going to service support specialists or some kind of an imaginative name like that, and bringing people from DCFS or community health agencies, things like that, because kids need those resources, families need those resources in the school setting, and there is a significant need right now.
You're right. And you may be interested to know this, and listeners may be interested to know too. We've mentioned this in a previous show, but I'll say it again that Dr. Jen Schwanke, who co hosts my podcast, is the deputy superintendent at Dublin City Schools north of Columbus, Ohio. And some time ago, I don't know if it was a year or two ago, her superintendent had this idea of they saw the need,
Hmm.
they saw the lack of available people for that kind of work. So they offered to their teachers, anyone who's interested in getting this additional training to be involved in social work along with, as with whatever education degree you have, they paid for the degree, they paid for the training, and they had I can't remember the number, but I can look back at this. I'm pretty sure Jen said around 20 different people within their district who were trained and then given positions by the school as salaried positions by the school. So Brandy, you're right. The need is there, and there is even some districts as innovative as Dublin that have said we've got to fill the need ourselves. But you're right that so if you're listening to this and you've got an interest in student mental health and counseling and social work, there's a place for you for sure in
Yeah.
education. Not just it's not just teachers who become leaders; it's people within those fields as well. You're also go ahead. I know you had some follow up thoughts there.
No, that is so amazing that they were able to do that, to fill that need and to get imaginative and innovative and provide a grow your own program for their people. Because I'm also a working genius facilitator, and what I know is that whenever you can help your staff members operate in their working genius in the area that gives them the most joy, they're more likely to stay in that organization or that school district. So kudos to them for recognizing not only the need, but also building up their people in their organization to help them be the best that they can be.
I agree. Now, you wear a lot of hats. Not only are you an author and a consultant and an educator, you have served in a lot of roles. And right now you're serving a school district. So if you don't mind, I'd love for you just to share a few celebrations of some of the things that you're currently working in, even as you're taking so much time to support and resource leaders.
Yeah, so I've started my new business called Spark Hope EDU. So at this point in the school year, I have stepped away from my role as superintendent at the Mount Olive School District. But reflecting back on my time there, some of the things that I am very proud to say that we did together is we built a lot of systems. We did a lot of system work while we were there because what I recognize and what many of the people in that organization recognize is that people get exhausted and burnt out and depleted, not because they don't love what they're doing, but because they're being asked to carry so much weight. They're being asked to do so many jobs, and the systems aren't supporting the work they're doing. So they're working 2 and 3 times harder than they should have to work. So the thing that I am most proud of on an organizational through that organizational lens is the systems that we were able to create. From a more people or human-centered lens, the things that I am most proud of are when I look back and I think about those students that stepped up into leadership roles. I can think of one high school student. I believe she was a freshman when she did this. They had see you at the flag, see you at the pole. That's kind of a national thing that many schools allow their students to organize and to facilitate on an annual basis. And it had kind of went by the wayside in our school district. And this freshman student, it brought me so much joy to see her step up. And not only did she organize the event, but she and her little sister facilitated that event. And they brought in well over 20 people that first year that it was brought back. It was a proud superintendent moment for me. Anytime that I can see students showing up and showing off their skills, especially their leadership skills, that gives me a lot of hope for our future. And then, if I may, one more story is our Macoupin County CEO program. We had 2 students this past year that were in our CEO program, and watching them serve and organize and create businesses and then come to events and provide the products that they created. It just really makes your heart swell with pride when you see them showing up and doing the thing that they love. But while they're doing that, they're learning all of the people skills, all of the relationship skills, all of the things that they need to learn in order to be successful people in life.
I love that.
It makes me proud.
Well, you should be. And one of the things I loved about your book, Brandy, and this is what I've just heard you saying, is that if we want to encourage educators who are stepping in to carry the load of their work, how do we reduce the amount of weight that they're carrying? And so your book is both inspirational, but it's also really practical. So for you, the HOPE framework, habits, optimistic outlook, purpose, excellence, aren't just aspirations. They're the framework for how to build the systems necessary for educators to reach their goals. So I'm just going to ask you, I know you wrote a whole book on this, so you can't say all of this in one setting, but talk a little bit about why that framework is so important for you to have the systems necessary to help relieve that burden.
Yeah. And I think that one of the reasons it was so important for me to put that in a system framework is because I did see the weight people were carrying. And, I kept going back to mindset. That's where I kept starting from as I was wrestling with the problem that I was trying to solve in writing this book. And How do you tackle that problem of mindset whenever people are there, maybe they're not coming together and they're not getting the results that they want in a school or an organization. And so with the system of hope, it's an intentional practice of self-reflection to improve self-awareness and build that self-efficacy or that belief piece. It's believing in yourself or believing in others. In one area of the book, I talk about holding hope for people until they can hold it for themselves. And so that system of hope, it kind of starts with your thoughts. And then your thoughts help you to create the habits that you need to start, the habits you need to stop, the habits you need to maybe consider for somewhere down the road, or maybe just habits that you're going to continue, things that are serving you well and you're going to continue them. But habits is so important. And we spend so much of our time kind of just operating on default. We
Mhm.
need to be intentional and we need to, I think you talk about backward design, backward mapping. We need to know what life we want to create. What do we want out of this life? And then create the habits to support that. Have that optimistic outlook because it's not if, it's we are going to have traumas and tragedies and adversity in life. So what is the optimistic outlook that we can foster in ourselves and others to kind of serve as a proactive measure or a preventative stance in dealing with those kinds of things? And then that purpose piece, it all needs to connect back to why we're doing what we're doing. It needs to connect back to what we hold dear. What are our values? And if we are doing the things that we value, that light us up, that fuel our passions, then we are going to be much more fulfilled in the work that we do. And that's how we get to excellence. And it's just 1% better, consistently every day, 1% better, not me comparing myself against you, but me comparing myself against me yesterday and getting
Mhm.
consistently better over time.
I love that. And I have a couple of follow-up questions, but let me just pause there to tell Principal Matters listeners that if you want the 5-minute version of Brandy's book, and then you want to be like, okay, how can I unpack all of what she just said? Just rewind, just go back and listen again because that was such a great summary of your book. But let me ask you this as a follow-up, especially when you're talking about that idea of holding out hope for someone else. You tell such a touching story about a student you named Reagan in the book. Can you explain what you learned from that experience of trying to hold out hope for someone else who didn't necessarily want help, or at
Right.
least wasn't, um, didn't seem like they wanted help?
Yeah. And just you asking that question makes me think of it a little bit differently today because it makes me think of all of the people in our lives that we love so much and we want to help and we're not able to yet. So we're holding on to that hope for them.
Mhm.
We just have to be patient and we have to consistently love them. But for Reagan, the powerful thing about that story is that her principal believed in her. And he's the one that referred her for counseling. And the first time I met Reagan, I showed up and she told me, she said, I've talked to counselors before. It didn't help. You're wasting your time. But I just consistently kept showing up and holding hope for her. And, through the power of relationships, just building that relationship, um, encouraging her whenever she was struggling, talking to her about the things that she was interested in, showing her that she is seen, she is valued, and I wanted to hear her story. The funny part of it is the connection piece came over a Big Mac. I set a challenge for her and I asked her, it was something to do with her schoolwork, and we kind of created an incentive. And I bought her a Big Mac and I followed through and I brought her that Big Mac to school and I gave it to her. And something broke then, and she started to change and she started to see things differently. Now, that doesn't mean that Reagan was perfect from that point forward. As a matter of fact, she ended up going to a residential home and a hospital. But you know what? And I don't know why, Will, but for some reason, every place that child went, I went and visited her.
Mhm.
Something about her. I don't know if I needed her or she needed me, or maybe it was a combination of the two. But fast forward to today, she's got three beautiful children. She has a business, and I'm sure she has struggles of her own, but now she's holding hope for other people. And Reagan is truly an inspiration to me. Just that, somebody who was in with the wrong crowd. She had gotten involved in drugs. She was struggling with decision making and family relationships and so many things. But she's an inspiration to me because there is hope. There's always hope, that people can make the choice to choose a better path and to have a better life.
There's so many things I love about that story. Thank you for telling it and writing about it too, because I know that Reagan represents many, many students whose stories you've stepped into, but also Reagan represents anyone listening to this conversation. You've got a Reagan in your school right now, or you've got a Reagan in your life right now, or you may have a Reagan that's going to be on your staff someday. There's always someone in our lives that we need to be the ones holding hope for them. And I've said this in other settings before, Brandi, but I'll say it again. When I think about the Reagans that I've worked with over the years, I often have to remind myself that this is the chapter I get to be a part of, but
Yeah.
it's not the whole story.
Mm-mm.
And when you hold on to that hope that the story for them can be something more beautiful, more meaningful, I think it gives you a chance to be that hope holder. Sometimes when they've given up hope themselves, and so I know that's not magic. It's not a quick fix answer, but I just thought it was such a beautiful story to illustrate what you're trying to share when it comes to the power of holding on to the most optimistic view you can have when working with someone else. Anything you want to add to that
Yeah.
before I transition?
Well, I think it's the fact that, having that sense of hope, that power of belief. I mean, kids are so intuitive. They know when you believe in them and they know when you don't. And with Reagan, she knew that I believed in her and that I was going to show up for her. Something that simple is so very powerful. And I think that as we are curating our spaces in our schools and in our districts, we need to keep in mind those students like Reagan who maybe they don't have somebody other than the people in school that are going to hold hope for them. And so we need to curate spaces where those students feel seen and valued.
You also talk a lot about, um, as carriers, you're also committed to resilience. I'm just going to use
Mhm.
that word. And because of your background in mental health and student well-being, you in one of your chapters, you talk about the difference between post-traumatic disorder and post-traumatic growth. And I just wanted to ask you, why does it make a difference in the way you reflect on leading others, or even your own growth when you think about those two dynamics?
Yeah. So post-traumatic stress, when you think about the stress that you carry, um, post-traumatic stress is usually it comes from a traumatic event. And that traumatic event is a wound. Most literally defined, it's just a wound. But the way we carry that, our perceptions of that, and how we carry that in our body, that's what makes the difference. And so when you have that stress, it elicits a choice out of us. We can either operate in fear mode or in love mode. In fear mode, we're restricted. We isolate ourselves because of stress or trauma or anxiety. We kind of shut ourselves off to possibility and connection. But when you make that choice to switch over to the growth or the love mode, then you're opening yourself up to the possibility. You're opening yourself up to connection and potential. That's the power in post-traumatic growth. And in my book, I talk a little bit about my brother, Dustin. Dustin was with Brandon when he drowned on that Saturday afternoon in May, so many years ago. And Dustin has struggled. He's went down a path that he got involved in drugs, and he has sometimes made choices out of fear. And we all do. Don't get me wrong. We all do. But at the end of the day, I think you have to self-reflect and make that conscious decision to choose love instead of fear. Because when you're operating in fear mode, you are not able to see the possibilities that lie ahead. But when you have that love mode in the on position, you're able to foster connection, foster community, foster potential and possibility. And that's what post-traumatic growth is all about.
Thank you for saying that. I'm a big fan of Dr. Timothy Keller. Uh, he has passed away in the last couple of years, but he was a prominent Presbyterian minister in New York City, wrote lots of books, and I've enjoyed listening to his sermons over the years. And I once heard him in a talk explaining the difference between, in his work counseling people through the most difficult crisis in their life, he would say that he would often see people motivated by three options, the fear being one of them that you mentioned, or ego and self-pride being the other, And so he said, so often when we choose fear as our motivation or our own ego as our motivation, then we're being driven by something that's going to usually lead to some more destructive behavior. But if we choose, and he actually used the word beauty, which I thought was so cool because you call it love, and I'll say it's all the same, but
Right.
it's when you recognize what's what is the higher end, what's the most optimal value, what's the highest ideal that I want to have for my own experience and for the experience of the people in front of me, and then how can my decisions be made through that filter, then
Mhm.
suddenly, man, it changes your decision making, Randy. And I think that's one of the reasons why, um, when you were talking about this in that chapter, it stood out to me as like we can either respond to the stress of trauma and face it, like it or not. Most educators, if they stay in this work long enough, won't just experience personal trauma. They'll
Mhm.
experience shared trauma because you're walking through some of the hardest experiences with other people's kids and families and teachers and community members. And
Mhm.
you can either allow that to become something that drives you into more anxiety and fear, which I'm not suggesting that we're all human and we all need to be able to process the grief and the stress. But then we also at some point need to ask us, how is this going to help me love people better? How is this going to help me serve people better? And so it's I love how you turn that around and ask, okay, we're all going to face this ultimately. So how can it grow us? Not
Yeah. And hope is not a passive action. It's a choice. It's a choice to take action. And growth requires action. You have to do something. You were on my podcast earlier today, and one of the actions that we were talking about that you take, you listen to podcasts, you read books, you reach out to colleagues, and you continually and consistently learn. And it's so important that we invest in ourselves. And I think that sometimes in striving towards post-traumatic growth, we have to acknowledge that rest is not a weakness. It can be a weapon to take care of ourselves. It is important for us to rest and to take care of ourselves. Sometimes, and this is one that I'm still learning, and I probably will for some time, asking for help.
Mhm.
It's okay to ask for help because, like you said, we are walking through some of the hardest chapters of people's lives with them. And the wonderful thing about education is all of the amazing relationships that we're able to build in this journey. And so sometimes we're going to have to ask for help, but when we do this leadership work, when we do coaching and we read those articles and those books, oftentimes we'll see where it says we need to just show up. But nobody ever says first and foremost, you have to show up for yourself. That's not ego, that's just self-care. That's taking care of yourself. It's important for you to do that because we can't pour from an empty cup.
I so agree, Brandi. I know as we're stepping toward the end of the show, I want to be able to wrap up and give people an access to your resources. So I'll ask you about that in just a moment. But before I do, um, I want to, will be a selfish question because I'm just curious as you're stepping into this new transition. Can you just explain to me and to listeners, what are you most excited about? What are what does this new reality look like for you? Because there may be somebody out there that's also in a career transition. And so tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to.
Sure. I am looking forward to just pouring into other people. I'm looking forward to, and I hope it doesn't sound too cliche or too Pollyanna, but I want to build a community of hope. We live in a world right now where people, they feel isolated. We have more opportunity to connect than ever before with technology, but I think we feel more isolated than ever before. And it's important that, like I said before, we take care of ourselves. But one of the ways we take care of ourselves is through that social connection. And I want to create a culture of hope, a community of hope, where we can really pour into each other and lift each other up so that we can do this incredibly important work of educating not only the leaders in the educational setting, but also the teachers and the staff and the students. It's a trickle down effect, right? And I think it's one of the most important missions that I could be on. And the thing that I'm most looking forward to is just continuing to build those amazing relationships with people that truly have that mission mind for educating today's youth, taking care of each other, and creating a better future.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, if you are interested in being a part of a community of hope, then Brandi Kelly is someone that you need to get to know. And you can find her book, Lead with Hope, Building a System of Self-Efficacy, anywhere where you buy your books. Brandi, how can listeners stay connected with you? And what are any parting words of advice that you'd like to leave with them?
Sure. The best place for them to find me is at my website, and they can go to sparkhopeedu.com, and that is my website. I am on most every social media platform, so you can find me there at either Brandi Kelly or Lead with Hope. And I would say that the parting advice would be, um, change starts from within. So today, if you're looking for just one practical strategy to get started with leading with hope, take some time. Maybe find a meditation to ground you and spend some time in self-reflection and consider, what is the future that you want to build? What's that going to look like in 5 years or 10 years? And start today with one very simple habit or practice or routine, because you deserve it, you matter. And the only way we're going to spread hope is if we start with that change effort from within.
I love it. Well, Brandi Kelly, thank you for being a leader of hope. Thank you for your resources and the new friendship that we've been able to develop through sharing time on each other's podcast. You can hear me be a guest on Brandi's podcast, and I'm so excited to share this out with Principal Matters listeners. Until next time, thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.